and hated man, Dan Bilzerian.
The king of Instagram, as his PR firm forces every article to call him.
The king alpha male.
The king alpha male.
Danny B. Dan Bilzerian.
I just have bitches around me all the time. I'd be jet skiing. I'd be driving around Ferraris and private jets.
It's been a hot minute since we last talked about Dan Bilzerian, actually. And back then, this man was getting dragged left and right as his empire of lies crumbled faster than a house of cards in a hurricane. He was out here wilding, blowing daddy's cash on nonsense and calling it a business expense. Try $75,000 for a paintball field, $40,000 on a rock climbing wall, and $31,000 on some Star Wars prop guns? Seriously? That's not business. That's cosplay for rich boys with no purpose.
A lot of kids that grow up rich, they have to, kind of play by their parents' rules or whatever. And so since I just kind of like did my own thing, I didn't have to conform, so.
And don't let the flex fool you. The mansion, leased, the yacht, borrowed, the models in his pics, probably booked by the hour. Dan was out here living a rented fantasy, fronting like he built a billionaire lifestyle from scratch, when really, it was all smoke, mirrors, and daddy's deep pockets. But now, I took another dive into Dan's world. And trust, the drama has leveled up. We're talking new scams aimed at desperate dudes, bold-faced lies he's still pushing, and the spectacular crash of his brand, Ignite. It tanked so hard, he ended up suing his own father. You can't make this stuff up. To Dan, and probably that one delusional guy who still shows up to high school football games in his 20s, he's a legend. But let's keep it real. Dan's entire persona screams insecurity. He tries to cosplay as a modern-day Hugh Hefner. He even said Hef was his idol. But the difference? Hugh built his empire from the ground up. Dan, he's a pampered rich kid clinging to a fantasy.
You were using the company as your personal piggy bank, and they flagged nearly $1 million of, expenses. So this was stuff like yacht rental, London trip, Star Wars set, bed frame, paintball field, vault.
And that's why Dan's been pushing the same story for years, claiming he made tens of millions playing high-stakes poker with billionaires. Yeah, he really wants us to believe he finessed his whole fortune just by bluffing rich dudes in some smoky backroom. But after digging deeper, that story ain't adding up. Either Dan's the luckiest card shark alive, or it's just the biggest coincidence ever that his daddy, Paul Bilzerian, is a certified scam artist. No joke, just last year, the SEC came after him again, saying he's been ducking them for 31 years and owes a jaw-dropping $180 million. Paul wasn't some fool either. He went to Stanford and Harvard. Super smart dude, but he used all that brain power to run corporate hustles, not build anything real. Companies brought him in thinking he was some genius investor, but instead, he played them dirty. His go-to move? Stock parking. That's where he'd get a broker to buy up stock under their own name, hiding who the real owner was. Imagine it like this. You order a pizza, then hand out the slices so nobody knows it's yours. He gets a slice, she gets a slice, but you still control the whole pie? From the outside, it looked like Paul was spreading the stock around, like everyone had their fair slice. But behind the scenes, it was all a setup. These folks were just holding it for him, already agreeing to hand it back later. That's how he kept his true stake hidden, like hiding the whole pizza by giving out fake bites. But here's where it gets real grimy. Paul was using other people's money to buy up this stock, investors who thought he was building their future. In reality, he was stacking power for himself, committing straight-up fraud under their noses. Once he had enough control, he'd launch what's called a hostile takeover.
And I would think about some poor girl banging Hugh Hefner and just going, oh.
Yeah, but it's not just him. It's kind of like all these fashion guys.
Basically, he'd scare the company into thinking he was about to snatch it from under them. That's when panic set in, and either the company or a so-called white knight would swoop in, offering Paul millions just to back off. This scheme, it's got a name, Greenmail. That's when you shake down a company by threatening a takeover and then charge them to make you disappear. In the 80s, Paul pulled this move again and again, cashing in tens of millions before finally getting slapped with fraud charges. But get this, he only served a little over a year behind bars. No serious punishment, no real payback. He just filed bankruptcy and walked away. Fast forward to today, and now you see why so many believe this is where Dan's trust fund came from. Whether it was traditional inheritance or some sneaky offshore stash, it all traces back to Paul's shady millions. And even now, word is Paul's still in the cut, helping run Dan's company, Ignite, as an unpaid consultant. But guess what? Ignite didn't escape the heat either. The SEC came knocking again, launching a full-blown investigation that ended with Dan suing his own father. So now the real question is Dan the villain just another insecure poser? Or was this whole thing a front for his dad's dirty game? Let's break it down. Just last year, the SEC slapped lawsuits on Ignite and Paul Bilzerian, but not Dan. Why? Because they claimed that Ignite cooked up fake revenue numbers in their 2020 Q4 financials. Word is, Paul and his circle were out here inflating earnings, doctoring paperwork, and pretending like vape pens were flying off shelves.
I think I got a lack of attention as a kid. It's like borrowing money from friends. Like I asked my parents for money and they cut me off, and it was...
They cut you off.
They never really loaned me any money, yeah.
Ever taken any seven-figure plus amount from family?
No. I got really no assistance.
The lies worked for a second. This so-called revenue surge made the stock shoot up 150%, making it look like Ignite was finally turning the corner after years of being deep in the red. But here's the kicker. The company that was supposedly buying all those vape pens, they straight up said none of it happened. No cash, no products, no deal. They publicly denied it over and over again. And when Ignite got audited, Paul allegedly pulled the most desperate move yet. He used a shell company that he secretly controlled to fake a backdated transaction and try to cover up the lie like it was all legit from day one. Now the latest twist, people are saying Paul used Ignite and his own son Dan as a front to hide his dirty money all along. Allegedly, he funneled millions through this flashy company using shell businesses to keep his wealth out of reach, while pretending it was all part of Ignite's success story. But surprise, he got sloppy again. And now all that fraud from over the years, it's finally catching up to him. The SEC isn't playing anymore. They want their $180 million, and they're stacking up every shady move Paul ever pulled to make it happen.
I don't give a where the money comes from. Like I would have loved to just get handed the money on a silver platter.
And just when you think it couldn't get messier, boom, Dan flips. He's going scorched earth on his own father, calling him out for dragging Ignite into chaos and making him look like a clown in the process. So now Dan's furious. And that's exactly what sparked his full-blown lawsuit against his own father, his former business partners, and Ignite itself. According to Dan, they straight up plotted to push him out of his CEO position in the very company that he made famous. But it doesn't stop there. Dan says that even after they booted him, they kept using his face to promote Ignite like he was still running the show. And to make it even messier, he claims they blocked him from launching a new brand by denying him the right to use his own image. And here's where it gets real spicy. In the lawsuit, Dan goes off on his father. He actually brings up Paul's past fraud charges and calls out just how shady he's been for decades. It's like he finally snapped and spilled everything, airing out the family secrets and throwing any loyalty right out the window. What's wild is, Dan also claims he was never really in charge. Despite being the CEO, he says he was just the face of Ignite with no real power behind the scenes. Basically, according to him, he was a puppet the whole time. But let's be honest, nobody's buying that completely. Dan says he raised red flags years ago, warning the shareholders, aka his dad and his dad's friends, that the company was headed for disaster. Their response, they allegedly kicked him out at the end of 2023. And then in June 2024, they went even further, revoking his chairman of the board title, something Dan swears was illegal since they didn't get the required 67% board vote. Now, Dan is suing over two major things: being illegally removed and Ignite still using his image like nothing happened. It's a dirty fight for power, control, and legacy. And the war inside the Bilzerian Empire just hit a whole new level. From where I'm sitting, it's crystal clear. Ignite was basically Dan's personal piggy bank for years. The company wasn't about business. It was about funding the fantasy. Millions blown on yacht rentals, staged photo shoots, and all kinds of nonsense that had nothing to do with running a real brand. It was lifestyle over logic. All while his dad allegedly used the company to rinse money behind the scenes. And now Dan's out here acting like he had no clue. Please, there's no way he didn't know what was really going on. But now he's playing victim, like he was just a clueless figurehead caught in the crossfire. And honestly, you almost can't blame him, because it looks like his dad tried to pin it all on him when the house of cards came tumbling down. Now Dan's flipping the script, demanding a jaw-dropping $50 million from his own father. And here's the kicker. He suddenly wants to do a deep dive into Ignite's finances. That's right, the same guy who flexed fake numbers and hyped up a brand nobody actually saw in real life is now trying to expose the books. Let's be real. I've never once seen anyone walking around with an Ignite product. Not in public, not online, nowhere. But Dan acted like it was the hottest thing out, like they were selling out faster than those trash gas station vapes. And the timing makes perfect sense. This all started crashing in late 2023. And what did Dan do right after? He launched his latest hustle, offering dating advice to lonely dudes. For a price, of course. Now he's pushing himself as some sort of guru for how to get girls. Like we forgot the last scam already. The grift never ends. It just changes costumes. Oh, sure, Dan. All those women hanging around you had nothing to do with your cash or that clout you got from Daddy's shady empire, right? Must have been your sparkling personality that pulled him in. The whole thing's a joke. And what's worse, every time he does an interview, the host is basically kissing his ego the whole way through. No pushback, no real questions, just straight up fan behavior. So I went to check out Dan's latest scheme, a site called Sigma Society, and let's just say he definitely borrowed a few pages from the Andrew Tate Hustle Playbook. It's full-on modern-day MLM vibes, wrapped up in a how to get women disguise. The tagline, learn how to attract the women you want without needing looks or money. Bruh, seriously? And it gets better. There's a whole questionnaire before you even get to the price. Based on how much money you say you make, the deal changes. If you report earning under $100,000 a year, you get offered his starter package, a $200 per month course. That's right, monthly. And Dan actually has the nerve to claim it's worth $4,000. Now, if you say you make more than $100,000, then boom, you get exclusive access to set up a private call with Dan himself, like it's some VIP upgrade. But let's be real, it's just a fancier upsell tactic. And the wildest part? Watching the review videos on the site is comedy gold. Man, the way these interviewers hype Dan up, it's straight up next level. Like, are they trying to date him or just impressed by the illusion? Either way, it's wild how no one dares to challenge a single thing he says. Let's keep it real. The dude refuses to admit he's a trust fund baby. He exaggerates his military history, randomly claims he was a cop, and every story he tells reeks of made-up nonsense. You can't take anything he says at face value, but apparently the SEC can. Because now people are saying Dan might have been the whistleblower behind the whole takedown. That's right, even though he was deeply involved with Ignite, he's not facing any charges in the SEC's lawsuit against his dad and the inner circle. To some, that screams cooperation. To others, self-preservation at its finest. And after watching hours of interviews and diving headfirst into Dan's digital circus, the thing that had me laughing the most, this guy has the audacity to pretend he's just a regular dude, living the everyman lifestyle, talking about budgeting and hustle, like we forgot about the yachts, models, and six-figure expenses. But anyway, what do you think about this whole messy saga? Is Dan finally getting exposed, or is he just dodging bullets while everyone else takes the fall? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Was he the snitch or the scapegoat? Make sure to like, share, and subscribe if you want more wild deep dives like this.